The cost of gasoline has been rising over the past couple of weeks, but relief at the pumps is supposedly coming tonight for Ontarians. And joining me now to discuss that is Canadians for Affordable Energy President Dan McTeague. Dan, today the Premier reiterated its government's commitment to lowering the gasoline tax. What kind of an impact will that have on lowering gas prices, and to what extent will the relief at the pumps tonight be felt by Ontarians across the province?
Well, thank you for the interview, White. And it looks like we're going to see about a 6.4 cent net decrease provided by the provincial government. Timing is everything. The markets also showed a decrease of about 4.6 cents a liter. So all told, we're going to see a decrease on Friday, Canada Day, of 11 cents a liter. And it may not stop there. We're looking at potentially another 5 to 9 cent decrease come Saturday. That'll put prices back to levels we haven't seen since about the middle of April. So certainly a welcome relief. But beyond gasoline, it comes at a time in which many people cynically believe that prices go up on long weekends. That may be more coincidence than reality. They certainly didn't on the May 24 weekend. They didn't now. And I think this is really an indication of perhaps good pricing of the best we're going to get for the foreseeable future, because I sense that we're going to be heading to higher prices soon.
And today in his press conference, the Premier talked about how he wishes the federal government would also make a commitment towards, I believe you mentioned, the federal government's carbon pricing pollution plan, and potentially lowering that for a limited number of time. If the federal government were to do something along those lines, would that have an impact on the cost of gasoline, and to what extent?
Well, a coordinated effort by all governments, which we're seeing globally, even G7 nations are all doing the same, seems to be absent the priorities of this government, which rather than bringing prices down or finding ways to do that is in fact in no small way contributing to its increase. We are on the cusp edge of the official announcement of a clean fuel standard, which after 2024 will start increasing prices. I call it the second carbon tax. That will see prices skyrocketing about 20 cents a liter by the time it's over said and done in 2030. In the meantime, the first carbon tax will continue to raise prices an additional 30 cents a liter. So between the two, 50 cents between now and 2030. Also, we have to consider the effect of the government's reluctance at the federal level to come to the rescue of consumers. These prices are cascading into other areas of the economy. Most people are not unfamiliar with the massive, dramatic rise in the price of food. You can't blame global shortages for that or global circumstances. When a country like Canada, rich in both food production and energy, really has a lot to do with driving up those prices. Notably, the weakness in the Canadian dollar. It's maybe lost on people, but when the Canadian dollar falls behind the US dollar, even when oil's selling for $100 or more, we lose about 35 cents a liter in purchase power. So that's significant, and it's something that should concern all Canadians, because it's certainly not concerning the federal government at this time.
Some of the measures that the Premier mentioned today, he talked about how he wishes the federal government would do something, even if it's time limited. But introducing time limited measures, what I guess would happen after that time period, when that time limited measure comes to an end? Is the cost of gasoline just going to go back up to what it is now, or how would that sort of play into it?
I think the expectation of provinces is that they'll do enough to bridge them over this very, significant rise in the price of fuel. 5.7 cents plus HST is nothing to sneeze at, but it's not going to be a long-term solution. In fact, ironically, it may have the opposite effect if carried on a much larger scale. That's not to argue against those taxes, but it certainly is one where the government of Canada, which increased taxes during the pandemic and continues to do so with its initial carbon tax, continues to push. Despite the obvious that this is having a ruinous effect on the purchasing power of every Canadian. For the province, though, when this comes to an end, it does inevitably mean that prices will have to go up. If I were, given that I had mentioned that the federal government should coordinate this several months ago with the provincial initiatives, such as Alberta, such as Newfoundland, one of the things that I think would come of this would be a better understanding of both levels of government, federal and provincial, here in Ontario, across the country, reconsidering the idea of an HST or GST on gasoline, or at least providing temporary relief there. Adding, a revenue stream. Remember, gas prices this time last year, $1.30 a liter, now $2.04 a liter. That difference alone is taxed at 13% in the province of Ontario. That's a windfall for both federal and provincial governments. And I think that would be for a much better way to address this, perhaps in a coordinated effort to at least soften the blow to consumers who are not able to go out and raise their costs or raise their allowances or their salaries by an equivalent amount as this cascades through the economy.
What measures should be taken, whether it's by the provincial government or the federal government, to lower gasoline prices in the long term?
This falls on the feds, and I have experience in that area. I was a member of parliament for 18 years. I led 2 initiatives to get home heating rebates when the government was awash in cash. Again, the same scenario. GST applied to higher prices. It was not budgeted, nor was it part of the needs of government. So those were rebated. I think the federal government is duty bound to doing the same. I think it may be contrary to the current narrative out there, but if you ask Europeans who are now in a real mess, having gone down this net zero fantasy and transition to renewables, we now find ourselves more vulnerable. Costs have gone through the roof. There's a shortage, and there's obviously a war that's been no small part financed by short-sightedness of Europeans. I think Canadians should avoid that at all costs. Instead, they should be looking for solutions. And one of the ones that are clearly at hand is for this federal government to get back in the business of building pipelines as opposed to placating climate catastrophes in destroying them. And so Europeans are asking Canada for more natural gas. Europeans are asking Canada for more oil because coming from Canada makes a lot more sense than bringing it from shady types like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Iran, or worse, Russia, which is for the current state of affairs.
Okay, Canadians for Affordable Energy President Dan McTeague. Dan, thanks so much for explaining the relief that consumers will feel at the pumps tonight. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Wyatt.